And this is the long-awaited appearance by Madame Clinton in front of the Benghazi, pardon me, the Benghazi committee. She's something to sneeze at. Okay, we'll get to that. We'll get to Hillary Clinton and the question of Petraeus and Carter Ham, which is not coming up in front of this committee, but which is essential. Back in a minute. Welcome back to Crisis Radio. Just remind everybody, Rome, Italy, October 26th, Monday, the No Guerra, No NATO conference in Via Cavour, the Cavour Conference Center, Centro Convegni Cavour, and then on October 31st, Halloween, and November 1st, All Saints, I guess, Friedberg, Germany, near Frankfurt, that is within the S-Bahn. I think if you're in Frankfurt, you can get there very easily, or if you're in Mainz or Wiesbaden, I think you can get over there. So I hope to see old friends and new friends at both of these. We will improvise contact meetings for the Tax Wall Street Party United Front Against Austerity. Now let's look at Hillary and her appearance, much touted, right? Now, you have to remember the prelude to all of this is that Hillary's got all her ducks in a row thanks to the treachery of Bernie Sanders, who saved her in the Democratic debate as these other candidates, such as they were gearing up to make a big gang tackle of Hillary. It was Bernie who broke that momentum and saved her from some kind of criticism about her nefarious and probably illegal practices of keeping her own private email. Not the greatest issue, but whatever it was, that was the issue. And Bernie didn't care about the issue. He cared about being a border guard, a sheepdog, a stalking horse, a flank guard, whatever, a gatekeeper. That's Bernie. Now, today, Madame Clinton is up there dealing with essentially a bunch of quite crude, amateurish things coming from Trey Gowdy, Trey unscrupulous, Trey unprepared. And his big deal is, let's look at all these emails, and they're actually deducing. They say, how come you had more emails about Libya in 2011 or 2012? This obviously not going anywhere. There are two sides to this now. Remember, Mrs. Clinton, of course, has the worst of motives, to be sure. She's power hungry and Wall Street representative, and of course a warmonger, right? She's a neocon. She is always the biggest warmonger in the room because she has to be. If she's not the biggest warmonger, then from her warped feminist point of view, she says, I'm going to be attacked as a weak woman unless I'm the biggest warmonger. Well, that is, once again, the precise clinical definition of weakness, that you're overcompensating for what you perceive to be your big vulnerability. Benghazi was an October surprise. Why did it take place on September 11th, 2012? Because that's an October surprise in the era of early voting. So the October surprise was killing an ambassador. In terms of the chain of command of the relevant assets did not go to Hillary Clinton, evil though she is, unsuited for the presidency though she is, for sure. There are two lines. The ground forces, and this is a group of CIA highly trained knuckle draggers, right? Paramilitaries. And they're in the CIA annex. This came up in the part of the testimony that I heard before starting the show. Madame Clinton referred, just in passing, to an agreement about the CIA annex. Well, there's a CIA annex in Benghazi, and it's between 12 and 20 or more CIA paramilitaries. They were not subjected to the command of Madame Clinton, but to the command of General David Petraeus, the leader of the Bonapartist neocon clique. Therefore, we have to ask him. He was at the movies that night, as I recall. He went to see Argo about getting hostages out of Iran, some kind of a story like this. This reminds me of some of these characters who didn't want to be accountable for Pearl Harbor, how they managed to make themselves scarce on the night of. So, ask Petraeus. Petraeus has not been called. Why not? I think even Tapper asked one of these guys on the committee, how come you haven't called Petraeus? He was the head of the CIA. He controlled the armed assets that would have made the difference. Oh, we're not done yet. We're not done yet, said the Republican. Fine. The other side of it is air cover. Petraeus on the ground and then the air. Does it have to come all the way from the northern Adriatic? Does it have to come from Aviano near the border with Slovenia? No. It can come from Sigonella, Sicily, the famous NATO base on Sicily, Sigonella, 1 to 2 hours away. Who controlled those assets? General Carter Ham, the commander of United States African Command, U.S. AFRICOM. So Petraeus on the ground, commanding. And Ham in the air. That's the thing. So we want grilled Petraeus and grilled Ham. That's our demand. That's what the Tax Wall Street Party should say about something like this. That it's a farce because you're not talking Sigonella and you're not talking the CIA annex. So the other side of it, of course, is how was this brought about? Well, there were two sides to it, right? The killing was apparently done by Sufyan Kumu, Qumu, and this is a guy who was in Guantanamo concentration camp for a couple of years, very well known to the U.S., undoubtedly made a kind of a deal to get out of there. Those are the ones who did the killing. The people who should have been providing the indigenous ground-based security, the February 17th Martyrs movement, well, you remember the previous year there had been a rivalry for control of the rebel military, the terrorist rebel military of the Benghazi Rebel Council, and that had fallen to a guy called General Yunus. And the U.S. sent in Khalifa Hifter from practically Langley, Virginia, from the CIA countryside around Langley. So Hifter got in there, and this February 17th Martyrs Brigade were the ones who assassinated Yunus, leaving Hifter in command, and Hifter is still there commanding essentially the military forces of this Benghazi, Derna, Tobruk terrorist axis, right? One of the biggest breeding grounds, right? Vivarium for terrorists anywhere in the world. Suicide bombers, jihadis, you name it. They've got it all. And it's got to do, of course, with this Senussi Brotherhood. It's got to do with the fact that the British promoted terrorism against the Italians near the Egyptian border, therefore Tobruk, that kind of thing. So this is the background. You look at this you look with despair at these hearings, that they're so idiotic, they're so childish, they're so primitive, and they don't get anywhere near the truth. So again, the thing that Stevens was doing, his last meeting in his lifetime was with a Turkish consular official. Why Turkey, of all things, in Benghazi? Well, because that was his mission. Remember that Stevens had been the ambassador to the U.S. ambassador to the Benghazi Rebel Council, and he was part then of the airlift and sealift operation, which took armed terrorist rebels, the jihadis, out of Libya. Once Gaddafi had been killed, and once the Gaddafi fighting forces had been crushed, all of those crazies had to be shipped to Turkey, Alexandretta, as we've heard, and then into Syria. And a lot of them are still fighting today against Assad. So that is what is going on. And, of course, the libertarians, oh, my God, and the right-wingers and the reactionaries, they just don't get it. It's not going to come home for them. Now, we want to talk about Bernie Sanders. We've done a bit of work this week in the daily briefings. You can see those on tarpley.net. Get yourself a free subscription. If you don't do this, you're missing a great value. If you want to know what's going on. Bernie, of course, saved Mrs. Clinton, as we said before, from a potentially damaging round of questions. And now that Bernie has essentially revealed himself as a stalking horse, we're getting Mrs. Clinton more complacent and more inevitable. Who knows? Reality may. Back in a minute on World Crisis.